Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Johnstone, and welcome to the Grit with Wisdom podcast. This is the podcast that aims to delve deep into the inner psyche and the mindsets of mountain bikers from all aspects of our sport in order to help you understand some of the tools, the tactics, and what it takes to push the boundaries of our sport from a mental and emotional perspective. Today on the show, we have Chris Mildon. Chris grew up in New Zealand and has been riding bikes for as long as he can remember. From hacking around his town's old dump on homemade bikes as a kid to BMX racing in the 80s, he eventually found his wheels of choice, the mountain bike. Since then, Chris enjoyed some competitive years racing downhill and cross country before starting on his path to become a mountain biking instructor, where he now shares his huge passion for the sport with people of all ages and all backgrounds. These days, Chris is based out of the sunny coastal town of Nelson and travels all over New Zealand teaching mountain biking through his business, which is called Mountain Biking Skills Clinics NZ. As it works out, Chris also happened to be one of my first ever mountain biking instructors when I lived down in New Zealand. What an unlucky bugger, hey? Anyway, Chris was a huge inspiration to me, and the first lesson I had with him opened up a whole new world to me when firstly, I learned how much I had left to learn as a mountain biker. And secondly, I saw just how passionate, friendly, and stoked Chris was to be out there on the trails doing what he loves. So let's give a warm welcome to Chris Mildon. Okay, Chris, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, look, it's my pleasure to be here.
Fantastic, man. As I said earlier, kind of in the show intro, you were a huge inspiration to me. You were actually the unlucky bugger who had to coach me for my first ever skills lesson down there in Rotorua all those years ago. So thank you, Matt. It was kind of the one moment that kind of fueled my fire and kind of inspired my love for learning and my love for teaching as well. So yeah, I just wanted to express how grateful I am for you for kind of that moment to start with.
Well, that's just awesome. You know, that's kind of that kind of feedback on someone who's been through this process is just amazing. So yeah, no, my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you, man. That's kind of one of the best things about being a teacher, isn't it? And kind of hearing stories like this years down the track.
Yeah,
for sure. Coming up. Fantastic. Well, you know what? I think it would be really cool if we could start out by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what your journey has looked like as a mountain biker so far.
Whoa, okay. It's been a long one. I've kind of been on bikes since I was 4 or 5. You know, as a really young kid. Riding to school and building old dinghy bikes that we used to ride around on trails that were really just walking trails. You know, motocross handlebars on a bike and brake levers, and off we went. That kind of led me through, BMX racing in my teens, and it was kind of a big growth period in the BMX scene back in the 80s. It seems like so long ago. But yeah, I guess it was. But in New Zealand, it was just really taking off, and we were able to sort of see what was happening in America, where it was, already well established and professional, and we were sort of on the coattails of that back through the 80s. So, wow, spent a lot of years racing BMX.
And how did you see that stuff coming down from the States, being over there in New Zealand? I know there was no pink bike, no Instagram, any of that stuff back then.
No
was
internet.
That all in print magazine, or where were you seeing
Yeah,
that?
it was all in print magazine.
Fantastic.
It seems unreal thinking back to those times when there was no internet and we just couldn't get straight on and Google something up in seconds. So yeah, all we had was the print mags to go off, and they were like gold. Whenever they dropped here in shops, we just grabbed them and fed off them, and they circulated around. I don't know how many people, but yeah, that was all we had really. Wow. Yeah, good fun times though. Good fun times.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that background.
And I can get into that later. We had a visit from 4 or 5 professional BMXers at some stage during that time. They came out and it was like a demonstration visit, and it just completely blew us all away on what was capable what you could do on a bike. But yeah, that's another story altogether.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to dig into that a bit more later on.
Yeah.
But in terms of kind of, you growing up there in Hamilton, after the BMX racing, where did you kind of head to from there?
I sort of started working, did an apprenticeship. I actually left New Zealand shortly after finishing that apprenticeship and traveled around Europe, spent a year in Africa and, just traveling all over the place. So, that was 4 years before I got back to New Zealand. And once I got back, I sort of got into multi-sport quite a lot, some big multi-sport stuff, Ironman and coast-to-coast sort of stuff. So that was good fun, but I was trying to do it while I was, sort of taking on mountain biking as well. So during that time, I borrowed a friend's bike that had fat tires and took it for a ride in the forest around Rotorua and just realised that, this was pretty cool. It was just something that was really special and really gelled with I think everything I liked about riding the bike. So the multi-sport stuff dropped away pretty quickly, and mountain biking really became my sort of two wheels of choice. Cross country racing, downhill, just whatever we could get into at the time. And this is in the mid to late 90s.
That's awesome.
So,
what was the Redwoods Forest like back then down there in Rotorua? Because I know right now it's a mecca. There's trails everywhere you look. What was it like back then when you were just getting into it?
It was just starting really. So there's a character called Fred Christensen who he definitely doesn't get enough kudos for what he did in those early days of mountain biking in Rotorua, but he was actually in the forest building trails, way back then, with the the corrections crews, the PD workers. He had a real vision, I think, very, very early on for this, and he's kind of like the godfather of the trail network in there at the moment. He started that whole process running, and he was running events as well. So the trails sort of started with that impact, that input from him, and it's gone on to be something pretty amazing now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so cool to see kind of where it is today, and then to know, that's been 30 years in the making for some of these early guys that had that vision.
Absolutely.
So super thankful for them, those guys all around the world that have been doing this good work.
Yeah. So where did I go from there? Well, spent a good 10 years racing. Broke my leg pretty badly in 2004 while I was racing. So that kind of put a bit of a sudden halt to the downhill side of things that I really loved. It's something that I really haven't been able to take back up again. And I as much as I would have wanted to, probably not a good idea with having to manage a knee that's kind of not too happy these days with too much abuse. So occupational hazard, I think, but it's probably the only big injury I've ever had. So
was that kind of a turning point into adopting more of maybe a cross country or enduro style of riding for you once you're able to get back to the bike?
Not really. Like I was off the bike for a while, but it kind of took me to a place that I wasn't expecting. I got more involved with with Mountain Bike New Zealand, with sort of putting some time into the national space with mountain biking. So I was the chair of Mountain Bike New Zealand for 4 or 5 years from 2006 on. It just opened the doors to some unexpected things. And coaching for mountain bike skills clinics also dropped in there at that time. But once I was back on the bike, I had to really squash my competitive urges, which were, I'm still trying to do now. And I can sort of scratch that itch just by doing the odd race here and there each year. But I'm starting to get over it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm starting to get over it. But every once in a while I need to do that sort of stuff just to keep my my inner animal satisfied.
Yeah, no, I can certainly relate there. And what is it that you love about competing? Like, what do you get from it?
Well, especially the downhill side of things, and I suppose enduro to a large extent these days. It's not, for me. It's not so much about all the fluff that goes with the event. It's you're actually out there competing against yourself. I mean, that's how I view it. The clock might be on, but you're trying to. For me, I'm always trying to ride to the best of my ability, and try to put everything together into that short amount of time. I mean, it's that old saying, we're all striving for the perfect run against the clock. I still haven't had one. I'd love to one day, but
yeah. No,
I also like coming out of one of those events feeling like, oh yeah, I could have done better. I know what I could have done better. So it's always good to have things to work on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think without that strive in racing and riding itself may become boring. Hey? If we could just go out there and get our perfect run. So, what's next? Yeah.
So what do you do when you get your perfect run?
Exactly. What's next?
Do you just stop?
Yeah. So it would almost be a curse to have one, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So look, I mean, that's where I'm at these days. I just ride for my own enjoyment. Bike technology is just amazing. So, it's a great time to be riding trails and just having a good time with it. And the trail development side of things, that's been a constant for me all the way through mountain biking. So I've always been involved at some level with either running the local mountain bike club or, just doing something in that space. Because, the trail development and the access to trails is just like a hand in a glove for me, I think, with getting people out there and doing it and supporting them in the right space.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something I'd actually love to dig into just a little bit more. I know you mentioned when we were chatting earlier in the week, you've got a philosophy around trail development and also rider skill development that you call the 90-90 philosophy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, if you're a crusty mountain biker, I think maybe block your ears, because this doesn't gel too well with the normal mountain biking philosophy, especially here in Nelson, I've got to say.
Yeah, and I have to ask the North Shore old school guys to turn off their ears right now as well, please.
Yeah, exactly. So look, maybe this comes with years of being involved in this space, but for me, and for definitely the trail networks I'm involved with, this really simple philosophy is what we're using for it now, and it's 90% of the trails for 90% of the riders, and it's kind of like a pyramid structure. I think you really experience amazing mountain bikers are often right at that pointy end, but underneath that pointy end, there's just so many people out there who are mountain biking who don't need the hard tracks and don't necessarily want them either. They're happy at an intermediate grade 3 level trail. They might want to progress a bit further off, but that's enough for a vast amount of people out there riding bikes, and especially for people who are getting into the sport and learning their way through that progression. They need those trails to work their way through. And look, I know globally we don't do it well enough. We if you give a bit of land to a mountain bike and say go build a trail, it's always going to be a hard trail.
It's interesting, isn't it? It is usually the experienced mountain bikers that are quite good at their sport that are building the trails. Quite often, I think the trails are built for them as a rider, looking through their lens rather than through someone that's learning or just starting out. And
it makes sense, if you're going to build a trail, you're going to build a trail that you want to ride, right? I mean, I totally get it, but there's all these people out there that need something else. And,
No, it's interesting, and I like what you're saying, because you're not saying get rid of all the hard trails. We only want flow trails or easy trails. You're just saying that we don't maybe need as many of them because there's not as many guys or girls at that pointy end of the stick where they're really pushing the sport.
Yeah, that's true. And like Nelson here is a great example. We've always had a reputation for having really hard trails, and we still do. But we're starting to fill those gaps a lot better with those easier trails that actually progress through to the hard stuff.
Yeah, almost like stepping stones that people can work on and get to that hard stuff instead of just dropping straight into the deep end.
Absolutely.
I like that. We're starting to see a lot more of that here in BC, in Canada as well. Historically it was really gnarly, really techie stuff, but we're starting to see, more and more of those stepping stone trails put in place. So that's awesome. I like that philosophy. So while we're on the note of, coaching and teaching, I know you run a business called Mountain Bike Skills Clinics, New Zealand. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, when did that start and why?
Right. So this all got rolling in the early 2000s. A very good friend of mine, James Doddsy. He's globally famous, I'd say, or was. He really wanted to share what he knew about riding a bike, and in his own words, like he was racing downhill while I was as a younger guy, but for James, his skill development, like he wasn't a natural rider. He certainly had a fair amount of natural ability, but to race, he knew that he had to really work on his skill package to actually get better and get to the level that he wanted. So he knew that he had to constantly work on his skills, and he freely admitted it. That was a really big part of his success on a downhill bike. And he really wanted to share it because it was such a learning experience for him that, it was something that he was just really passionate about sharing. So with his partner, Gabby Malloy, they put this all together into a skills package. They looked around the world and they actually couldn't find something that gelled with, what they knew and what they'd learned about, how you ride a downhill bike fast and, well. And that basically led them to setting up mountain bike skills clinics. They put everything together into a package that really made sense. It was really progressive, and they spent about 4 or 5 years just traveling up and down New Zealand, coaching people. Oh. And that's how it all started.
Yeah, that's huge. Because I know, growing up in Australia, and I'm sure New Zealand was similar, we all ride bikes. There's lots of wide open space. We're often self-taught and maybe a little bit ignorant to the level of depth it actually requires to learn to ride a mountain bike well. I know I was certainly like that. I was like, I can ride a bike. I've been riding a bike since I was 6 years old, kind of thing. Never even crossed my mind, to get a lesson until I did dig a little bit deeper and realize, how much I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's huge. I can only imagine how many riders they helped when they, first were out there and were like, hey, we can teach you some stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, James was a really analytical sort of guy, and he took everything back to first principles and pulled in elements from motocross, from MotoGP, all of those sports that had quite a bit of information out there, and was able to mesh it and apply it to what he knew about how riding the downhill bike worked. And look, we're still coaching the same information now, which is a real testament to the work he did in those early days. But what has changed, I guess, is the evolution of the bike. So I'll put it this way. If the bike I'm riding now, if I was riding that while I was racing downhill in the 90s, I would just sort of been loving it. So what's happened is the way we're riding these fantastic bikes is much more in line with where this all came from in that downhill space. So it's almost like the bikes have caught up to the skills techniques that they put together. It's quite an amazing story.
No, that's awesome. And I know as the bikes have changed, like you just mentioned there, some of the techniques you're coaching have changed slightly as well. So there's a big one I'm thinking of, but I'm curious, as a coach out there, what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions people have about riding a bike that may have come from riding the older bikes back in the 90s?
Oh, every time, leaning back, hanging off the back, every single time. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So people who have come through from those early days, they're like, yeah, but we had to ride bikes like that. Well, yeah, we did to stay alive.
Yeah, I don't know. That was certainly something I was doing in that first lesson with you. That was kind of that big light bulb moment when we went down a kind of steeper gravel road and you said, right, get in an attack position. ready to handle this hill, and I was hanging off the back of the bike thinking, oh man, I'm nailing this. You shook your head. And yeah.
So it is a big one, that one. Yeah.
Why did people have to get off the back of their bike in the 90s? What's changed?
Oh, look, we're mostly on hardtails with, well, either no suspension or suspension that was pretty marginal. You really had no, it was always dangerous to be over the front of the bike, or I wouldn't say over the front of the bike, but more balanced in the middle of the bike.
Yeah.
Because the front end of the bike just couldn't handle it. Geometry was awful. I'm actually amazed that that's taken us so long to get it right, because this information has always been out there in that motocross space.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So at some point with James and Gabby, they, the business was so successful that it wasn't sustainable for them just to keep traveling like they were. So they started pulling in coaches and the main centres around New Zealand, and I'd kind of been involved with them right from the start, and they started putting this all together. So they pulled me in for Nelson, and I've been coaching for skills clinics ever since.
Wow, how many years is that now? Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's about 12, 13 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing.
And in that time, the businesses, they sold the business to one of their coaches, and it's been through 2 subsequent coaches before it was offered to me. And I'd always said that if the business became available, I would grab it with both hands, because I just really enjoy it. So I've been running it now for 5 years, and we're still using the same structure. We've got coaches up and down New Zealand and all the main centres, and all running to the same program, and it's going good.
Fantastic. No, that's awesome. And that passion, it really just shines in you, from talking about the business like we are right now, and then to seeing you on the trail, the way you're just absolutely stoked to be out there helping people as well. I love it, man. It's inspiring. So you also mentioned you spent quite a bit of time with Mountain Bike New Zealand there, developing athletes and helping athletes. I'd like to hear you speak a little bit about, the impact that may have had on some of the guys down there in New Zealand.
Interesting time for me. 2006, we had the world champs in Rotorua, and I got pulled into helping manage the event. Lots of good people from around New Zealand got pulled in at the same time. So that was a really good experience. Being exposed to that high level, that world level of racing for the first time, and we had a big New Zealand team at that event. And after 2006, I got involved with Mountain Bike New Zealand and chaired it for a while. But I ran the national series events for 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
But the big area for me that I really wanted to push was that whole performance side of things and development. So we had some great riders back then. I still do. Some of them are still racing. Some of the guys, Brock and some of those juniors, Blinky. They came through into those elite sort of sporting levels on their own back. They really didn't have a lot of support. They made that happen themselves, and it was the same for a lot of our cross country racers that managed to get to that point too, like Kashi Lukes. They had to get overseas really quickly once they realised they were at a good level, and push things overseas rather than necessarily get any development support in New Zealand. There just wasn't a lot of it here, if any. So a big part of what I did when I sort of started pushing that development side of things was to try to get some structure in place in New Zealand, so that those juniors that were coming through that had some aspirations, that we could support them and actually give them what they needed to sort of kick on and get overseas, and get into that environment where they really needed to prove themselves. And it was hard going, I've got to say. It's like constantly bashing your head against a brick wall with the national national organisation, Cycling New Zealand, Bike New Zealand. I guess it's just the structure of that elite sport, though, that if there is funding coming through, it's pretty much targeted against those elite athletes.
Yep.
The development side of things has always been left to largely look after itself, and unfortunately, the approach has always been that those really gifted athletes will always pop up out of the system at some point, and then they grab them as elite athletes. Yeah. So it's kind of not a really good way to go, I don't think.
Yeah. So what kind of framework or structure did you put in, or were you aiming to put in to help these athletes get out there?
So we really started by running regular development camps based around our national series. We'd pretty much keep them open and have these young guys and girls coming in, running them through all sorts of different workshops, and having our elite riders supporting them through those camps. So they not only got good information about all the planks of nutrition, proper training, all that sort of stuff. We're really feeding them this good information, and they had the aspirational stuff from the elite athletes to help them through that as well. So if they were going to pick it up and run with it, that was the time it was going to happen. And a lot of them did. A lot of them really kicked on from there and got overseas and got themselves cracking.
Yeah, fantastic. That's huge. Like some really good work you and everyone else did down there.
It was good fun. It was hard. It was hard working in that voluntary space. Even harder, but definitely worthwhile. And that really led to having, we as Mountain Bike New Zealand, we really dug our toes in with especially our world champs teams, that we weren't just going to stick with the elite athletes who are capable of winning medals. We had to have those development riders coming through at those events so they had the experience. And thankfully, we've been able to keep that rolling, right through to today, really. And there is a pathway for those young athletes to come through now. They've got something really good to work with.
That is huge. And you mentioned there having some of the elite guys there, maybe mentoring some of the younger guys coming through. You also mentioned earlier, back when you were BMXing, there were some pro riders come down to kind of show you some different stuff. How important do you think it is knowing where that bar is, or knowing, what there is to work towards?
Oh, I think it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. And I think back to that BMX demo visit from those American pros. We've been racing for a few years in New Zealand, thinking, we're doing all right. We're getting out the gate okay, and we're pretty quick around the track.
Yeah.
When they put themselves on the track, we just stood there and our jaws dropped. We just couldn't believe how quick they were going. I remember with one of the motos I raced against those pros, they were starting backwards on the start gate.
Wow.
This is their thing. So they could see just how slow we were, and they were having a bit of fun with it. So we were all up on the gate, ready to go, and they were backwards on the gate. Gate dropped. Off we go, and they spun around, and they were past us by the time we got to the end of the first straight.
Oh man, what a kick in the face.
Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, well that's the level. That's the level we're looking for. So we can get a bit tied up in our own events, and I suppose within our own countries. But once you're overseas and you're really exposed to that high level of the sport, that's something you really need to know early, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And curious, how do you think that's changed now with the world being so much more connected with the internet, forums like Pink Bike, things like Instagram, stuff like this? I know we're exposed to high-level riders and high-level content a lot more these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a lot easier to get your head around it for sure.
Yeah. Do you think it's had effect on maybe riders starting out, though, on that note, that we're constantly exposed to riders riding at such a high level?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I'm sure it would have sped the process up. There's no doubt. If you can see what people are doing on a regular basis, it's definitely going to speed things up. But there's nothing like getting elbow to elbow with someone on the track either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important as well. Yeah. To not only know, where the end goal is, or even just where the bar of that sport is, but also to know, what the stepping stones are to get there.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, maybe that's where someone like you comes in and, teaches some of those fundamental skills first before we're thinking about, doing tricks at crankworks or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the things that probably is a bit of a negative with that is that you can see this stuff anywhere these days, as you say, and the danger is that some of the base principles and skills development, mental as well, can get dropped off a bit. There's a danger of sort of leapfrogging a lot of those steps to get to that high level.
Yeah, almost like getting distracted
so
by this hanging treasure at the end, but forgetting about some of the fundamentals along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I see that a lot as well over here. So on that note, I'm curious, do you have any key principles for operating at an optimal state of mind while riding? And I'm curious if you do, if this differs for, say, just like the fun rides you're getting out for now versus, say, downhill racing or, the style of riding you used to do. Bit of a loaded question there, I know.
I don't really. Like I've got, when I'm riding, especially on my own, if I'm going out for a ride, I've got, I'll always be climbing, before I'm descending. So my climbing time on the bike is a chance to kind of think about life, I suppose, and process what's going on, outside the bike. It's kind of like a free the mind process for me when I'm on a climb. And more often than not, by the time I've got to the top, if I've had anything bothering me, I've dealt with it on the climb. It's just, I can shed it, it's gone. And it just, it's been processed, and I don't really have to deal with it for the rest of my ride. So as a core principle, I think these days I'd struggle if I'm jumping on a bike, say off a shuttle, straight into a downhill. My mind's kind of not quite ready to go for getting that bike down the hill. So riding up a hill is a great way for me just to get my mind ready to go. Just to be in that right state of mind. And pretty quickly, I just basically switch off. I don't really force myself into anything. I just fall back into this really solid space where I can rely on my own skills without really thinking about it too much. So my downhill riding is very much in that space these days. It's kind of just switching off and enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love that state. It's such a, freeing, happy state to be in, isn't it? When you're not really thinking about what you're doing, it's all just happening. You're just working in the subconscious there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real joy.
Yeah, it's great to hear you say about, the power of pedaling up, for not only for the fitness, but for, freeing the mind and getting rid of all that clutter as well. That's something I'm a big believer of as well. But as you probably know, shuttles are a big part of the culture here on the North Shore, and especially, the chairlifts at places like Whistler Bike Park. So, I get around that as well, but I do, the same as you, have a bit of a tougher time kind of dropping straight in when I'm cold and when I haven't had that chance to kind of unwind and get back into the present.
Yeah. That's an interesting process, that one.
Absolutely. Have you ever found yourself, you've pedaled up, you've got yourself into a good state, but maybe mid-ride arrived upon a tricky bit or a feature, and you find yourself maybe not in that optimal state? I'm curious as to the process you might go through then.
It definitely happens. I guess I don't force myself these days. That's probably the best way I can describe it. So if I'm not feeling a feature, I just won't do it. I think back to kind of the early days of the sport. It really wasn't the approach we used to take. It was, there's a certain amount of, especially when you're riding with your mates and groups of people, there's certainly a huge amount of ego involved with dealing with a lot of those sort of things. So the whole peer pressure really kicked in with that stuff. I can look back on it now and see that. But for me these days, it's no big deal if I'm not going to do it. I'm just, oh well, another day.
Yeah.
But I've also got a kind of a well-developed checklist if I'm not feeling quite right on the bike as well. So
okay,
if I'm having a bit of if I'm not feeling it so much, I just go back to my good old checklist with body position, and generally there'll be something that I can be doing better. And I always find if I just hit that checklist through, just run it through my mind, I can just click straight back into where I need to be on the bike. So generally there's something with what I'm doing on the bike that's not working that's actually causing that.
That's fantastic. I love that insight there and that technique. And it's so cool to hear, for a rider and for a coach that's been doing this for so many years, you still take the time to go back to those foundations or those fundamental skills and check off that checklist, make sure everything's, all right before you do drop into one of these tricky lines.
For sure. Yeah.
I also love that idea of kind of, actually thinking about what you're doing as well. I find thinking logically like that is a great way to bring the mind back into the present, away from anything else that may be distracting us.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. I'm curious, man, you're full of passion, you're full of love for this sport. We see it, when we're chatting now and when you're out there teaching. What makes you passionate and keeps you motivated?
Whoa. Okay. Two big things. Obviously coaching is a big area for me these days. And I just get a real kick out of following that philosophy that was put in place so strongly by Dodsey and Gabby with skills clinics, and actually sharing that information. So a really big driver for me these days is just seeing the difference that you can make to people's riding really quickly by running them through some really good solid progressive skills coaching. And that motivates me no end. Someone like you coming 2018, I think, was it?
Yeah. Early 2018 down there.
Yeah, so 3 years later, and having the feedback from you that it made such a difference. I mean, that's why we do this, and that motivates me no end. So that's a big driver for me these days. And the other part of that, which is kind of connected, is the whole trail, the provision of good trails for people to access really easily. Seeing people enjoying those trails that you've either built or you're maintaining or had a hand in, that's a massive motivator for me. I love seeing people come off a trail I've built with a big grin on their face, just yee-hawing. It's like, yep, doesn't get much better than that.
For sure, man. There's nothing better than kind of sharing our love for adventure and for biking and just having good times out there in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. I love it. Next question I've got for you here, man, is do you have a riding motto or anything you kind of say to yourself to keep yourself grounded while riding?
No, I don't. I've been, I read that question and I was like, do I? I don't. I do if things go wrong.
Okay.
But I couldn't really share it, I suppose, in the podcast.
No worries, I'll let you keep that one to yourself.
Well, no, I don't really. Because when I'm in the right space with my mindset, the way I'm sort of working with the trail, I actually don't need one, which is kind of, I find that quite interesting, because I know the value of self-talk, and it can be a really valuable part of riding a bike. But for me, I don't have one. It's probably not strange, but I don't think that. Well, maybe it means I'm in that space, the right space, more often.
Yeah, I think it's a positive thing, if anything. It sounds like, you've got a really good structure and a really good process in place, so you don't often maybe get to the point where you're having a bad time on the bike in the first place. So you don't need to say anything to yourself apart from, wow, this is awesome, I'm having fun. Yeah,
that's the one. No, I'll go with that.
Fantastic. I'd like to talk a little bit about your kind of downtime off the bike now, if you're happy to do so. You mentioned earlier you had a big injury, you broke your leg.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of it too much, because I don't like, putting ideas in my head, but I'm more curious to, how did you get back to a point where you regained your confidence on the bike and you're back to a point, where you're loving it, you're having fun, you're managing that injury?
Oh, well, it took a while. It took a while. I think the first thing for me was that how the injury happened was random. Like it wasn't necessarily anything that I did. It was actually, I got nitty gritty details, I suppose, do help, but I got hit by a really nasty crosswind over a big double, practicing on the downhill course. So bike got pretty much blown out from underneath me. So it kind of wasn't something that, in terms of skill or anything else, I really could have done anything about. And that definitely helped with my sort of the way I was able to focus through the recovery side of things. I think if it's something that you've done where you maybe taken on say a really nasty obstacle or piece of track that you're not up to with your skill level, it can really have a big impact on your confidence, getting back to that sort of thing again. So for me, because it really wasn't me as much, it didn't really dent my confidence a whole lot. So the big challenge for me with the injury was actually getting back on my feet and getting back on the bike. And once I was back on the bike and able to sort of ride close enough to what I was doing before, I didn't really have to deal with a lot of that angst about confidence. I was sort of able to get back to it pretty quickly.
Oh, that's great, and a really interesting perspective, because a lot of the time we do maybe blame these injuries on something we've done, whether it was or not, and then like you said, that can give us a bit of a knock to the confidence. It sounds like for you that was maybe more of a physical injury where you were like, hey, this was it's out of my hands. It was the environment that decided to pick up the wind while I was in the air. And it's just a matter of physical rehab. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did compartmentalize it a bit into just physical, and that for me, that kind of felt like a really healthy way to deal with it. Took a while to get going again, but that was just the nature of the broken bones. So all good. It was like an interesting process to go through. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but I think there's some real value in that whole positive thought with all of this as well. And I use myself as a bit of an experiment, I think, with the recovery with that. I learned a lot. I didn't enjoy not being able to ride a bike.
It's never nice having time off the bike or time away from anything we enjoy. But I love that you've been able to turn that around into a learning experience and, take something out of it instead of it just being like a huge negative. And I'm curious now, like from your perspective as a coach, what is usually the biggest obstacle people face in achieving their riding goals?
Well, I think if you're going to boil it down, I think there's a point with people's skill development where confidence actually becomes almost like a driver for their own skill development. Now, until you get to that point, it's like a tipping point, I think. Okay. So until you get to that point where you're feeling confident with what you're doing, everything else is a little bit funky. And once you've got yourself over that point where you're able to build your confidence and grow it, then everything else becomes a lot easier. So I think it's probably the biggest barrier, but I was trying to work out what specifically that relates to with riding the bike, and I think it really comes back to one thing, and that's how you actually feel your traction on your tires.
Wow.
So if you're riding a bike and you don't have a good feel for what your tires are doing, whether they're gripping the ground, confidence is very, very hard to build. But once you've got a bit of a feel for what those tires are doing, you're away. And I see this again and again with people, that once they get to that point and they've worked it out and they go, oh, right, I can feel how those tyres are gripping. I'm not feeling so uneasy about them sliding now or moving underneath me, which, they're going to do. And I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I can sort of feel it. And for me, I think that's probably the biggest barrier with people we see coming through who are sort of wanting to learn to ride a mountain bike better is that feel on the tyres. And then, obviously deliberately increasing your traction management when you need it as well, with all sorts of different techniques.
That's fantastic to hear, and so cool to hear you boil it down like that. Because I know for me personally, that made a huge difference. Once I was able to feel traction, I was like, right, I'm confident I can focus on learning whatever else there is to learn above this. But until that point, we're almost at a bit of a barrier. We're not willing to try anything new because we're not feeling confident that we're going to stay on the bike.
Yeah, and it's especially true on really slippery, greasy tracks, or here in Nelson during our summer, we're really dry and marbly on top, so it's almost as slippery. So both of those extremes in trail conditions, people struggle with because they sort of can't manage their traction deliberately. They're sort of always feeling a bit off with what the tyres are doing. But you work it out, and what's that great Sam Hill comment? Just ride those wet tracks like they're dry. That's kind of the approach that you can take yourself to and progress to. And once you feel that, you're away.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. So instead of worrying about the fact that our tires maybe slip in a little bit, focusing on, having good foundation skills, riding the tracks like they're dry, and hence finding more grip, more traction from that.
Yep. And, once you're sort of riding defensive in those conditions, it just makes it worse anyway. So, it's just being deliberate with what you're doing on the bike and feeling it.
Being deliberate. Yeah, that's huge. That kind of leads into my next question here. I was curious as to what the biggest misconception people have about mindset, both for life and for riding bikes, in your opinion.
What did I made some notes here.
No problem.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. The only note I made is just don't take it so seriously.
Yeah, I love that. It's a true Kiwi response, even better.
Yeah. So, if you're taking life seriously, I don't know, it's going to be stressful. And it's the same when you're out riding a bike. If you're taking things too seriously, it's not going to be fun. You can get bogged down in all sorts of silly stuff if you're thinking about things too much. And it's supposed to be fun. And I think both in life and for riding, for me these days, the two things run in parallel. I have a lot of fun with my own life outside of riding, and I'm basically the same attitude I'm applying to both. It's a bit of having fun and finding a bit of flow.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. I've heard someone describe this to me as the 90% rule before, where they take the approach of giving it 90%, whether they're on the bike or in life. And that is because sometimes the way they explained it was that if we're, say, giving it 100% or 110%, we're trying too hard. Sometimes that almost negates our effort and we end up, trying too hard and slipping over or something like that.
Yeah.
They described it as, giving it 90% and finding that flow, being really smooth. But not trying so hard that we burn ourselves out.
Absolutely, that sounds spot on.
Yeah.
And that old saying that's still still hear it all the time these days, that if you're not crashing regularly, you're not trying hard enough. It's like, oh my gosh, what's that all about?
What's your opinion on that? Because I get that a lot as well. I know as a rider, since I started taking skills training myself and then understanding it on a deeper level as I taught others, I crash a lot less now. And I thought, it's kind of interesting. But still, all the time, people will tell me that, crashing is just a part of this sport. You've got to learn to accept it, almost brush it off when it does happen. What do you think about that?
No, we don't subscribe to that philosophy at all. If people are crashing regularly, there's something going on. And it doesn't take much to hurt yourself either. So, we don't subscribe to that at all these days. We'd rather people be out there with solid skills and know what they're actually doing on the bike to keep them on the bike, rather than having to have a crash and potentially not even learning from it. So, No, we'd rather see people on the bikes with good skills and they know what they're doing. And that's always been Skills Clinic's approach. It's, crashing doesn't have to be an accepted part of normal riding. I mean, I think for myself, I don't crash.
I love it. And it sounds weird even to say yourself as a mountain biker, doesn't it? But
yeah. I mean, I'll have the odd moment where, it's got a bit skatey, but I know I can generally pull it back. It's not very often I end up on the ground these days. And if I do, it's usually a big surprise.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I love that because, quite often I get asked as well, do you crash? I never see you crash. What's going on? And I have to really think about it. I have to, think back a couple of years to the last time I had a big crash. And it's not at all because, I'm this crazy high level rider and I'm so good I don't crash. It's because of the approach I take to my riding, similar to what you're saying there.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a huge change in thinking, in the mountain biking world. But I hope more people can kind of adopt that approach and have more of a long career versus these kind of short bursts of progression and then a big setback and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So another interesting project you've been involved in was called the Bikes in Schools project. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, well, this has been running in New Zealand for probably 10 years now.
Okay.
It was started by a businessman up in the Hawke's Bay, and he had a couple of kids at a little primary school, and he was like, they need to be on bikes. So he worked with the school to put a little riding track in and around the perimeter of their playing fields, and I'm pretty sure he bought them a fleet of bikes that the school had on site, so the kids could just get on the bike, grab a helmet, and just ride on this track during breaks and lunchtime. It was a pretty sort of forward-thinking thing for him to do, but what I guess what it's led to is this project called Bikes in Schools that's actually been funded through a trust that came out of that Hawke's Bay project, and now it's actually getting a bit of national level funding from Wakatoati. So there's, I think at last count, there was about 100 odd schools up in the North Island that have rolled the project out for their schools, and we're rolling them out down here in the South Island as well. So last count I think I've done about 10 schools here in Nelson and the Tasman region. So it's a combination of almost like a perimeter rhythm style track with rollers and camber corners, and some schools go full on and actually want a pump track, proper little pump track circuit. And it's mostly around primary school delivery, so it's it's sort of those 5 to 10 year olds, and it's just such an empowering thing to be involved with, I've got to say. So I've been building these tracks for the schools. They get the bikes in, and it becomes a mainstream activity for the kids in school time without any of the dangers of learning to ride a bike on the road and all those horrible things.
That's huge. It's only, that's something I could have only dreamed of having in school myself, and I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yeah,
we were always leaving school as early as we could to head down to the local skate park and kind of teach ourselves with no supervision or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that makes a big impact for the kids that are maybe growing up without bikes at home as well.
It does. Yeah. But the really interesting part of the project for me was where it came from here in Nelson. It was actually an inquiry from the district health board. They, he won't mind me saying this, but they had a project manager who was tasked with doing some active community work, and he had a bit of a funding pot. So he was like, best bang for your buck, what can we do with this money to actually make a real difference? And he was like, let's get some kids on bikes. So he used his fund of money to start seeding these Bikes in Schools projects. And this is the first time in all the years I've been involved with cycling where there's been a direct link back to health. So what he was doing was linking health outcomes to getting kids on bikes. and making the projects, or kicking the projects off at least with that funding. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to be involved with us. That's kind of everything that I'm involved with the sport for. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's such a great initiative, and it's so great to hear that for once you had almost like the funding come to you, as opposed to spending years and years and so many hours of your life chasing funding.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like a lot of the other stuff in the mountain biking world has been over the years.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, when the funding's available, everything's easy. Yep.
Yeah, really great to hear. I think our sport might be almost on a bit of a tipping point, where it is accepted as not just this thing crazy daredevils do out in the woods, but as this thing that is really healthy for people's physical fitness and mental fitness, and also for bringing the community together as a whole.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. And on that note, I know you guys down in Nelson, or in Richmond in particular, have a really cool mountain bike park out in the Sylvan Forest that you're involved with. Could you tell the listeners a little bit about that one?
Yeah, well, the whole area is fantastic. I guess we've got trail networks running from right behind Nelson through Richmond all the way out to Kaiteri out by the Abel Tasman, and then down to the Wairau Gorge as well, which is a bit of a famous old site these days. But yeah, the Sylvan Forest I've been involved with since 2014. It's a private piece of land owned by a family who actually live right out there on the forest. And they are just salt of the earth people. That's the only way to describe them. They've got this, what was a pine forest, and they really couldn't bear to see it not being used for something and just be sort of locked up with trees. So we worked with the family to sort of develop some mountain bike trails, just to feel their way with it. And pretty quickly they realized it was a pretty cool thing to be involved with. So it's actually led to quite a significant trail development out there in this forest, and it's just been harvested completely, so all the pines off the forest, and they've replanted with a mix of native and exotic species that will never have to be harvested again. So basically they've retired their 180 hectare pine forest for a recreational facility that anybody can use. And I love it. It's like unusual to have people who have that high level of generosity with what they're doing with their own property for a start. So that's a really unusual but just fascinating thing to be involved with. So excuse me. So yeah, the trail network, I've got about 30 kilometers of trails in there now. Wow. So the last count we had there was about 50,000 individual visits to the forest each year. So that 90 philosophy, we're really applying it to Sylvan Forest, and we're really seeing just the numbers of riders that are coming through there, certainly at those lower levels.
Wow, yeah, that's huge.
Need to be involved with.
What generous people, not only letting some people come and ride bikes on their land, but letting trails be built, and then now giving that land back to the community and planting some native trees on there as well. It's just amazing. They're
amazing.
So amazing. So often we have trails in these awesome pine forests, like the Redwoods Forest down there in Rotorua, but it's always kind of bittersweet, because just when the trails get really good, they've been ran in, they've been worked on for years and years and developed, the trees get cut down and the trails have to kind of start again. So that must be such an awesome feeling for you there now as one of the trail builders, and one of the managers, knowing that the trails you build now are going to be there for years and years to come, and those trees aren't going to get cut down.
Yeah, that's so true. And the trails, even for the ones where you rebuild on the original line that was there when the pine trees are there, they always feel completely different, with the trees gone. And the surface is always different. It does take some years to recover once those new trees start forming a canopy again. But I think it's just the evolution of the trail too. It's really nice watching how that happens, and just how people interact with that change over the years. So we're really looking forward to seeing that evolution with Sylvan as well as the trees grow.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know I certainly can't wait to come visit one day when World Travel is back on the cards again.
Yeah.
That sounds like an amazing spot there. I'm going to be respectful of your time here because I know we've been chatting for a while now. But kind of last couple of questions here. I'm curious, what's the biggest takeaway that you hope listeners learn from this conversation?
I think if you use me as an example, I suppose I'm kind of living the lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Am I living the dream? I probably am. It's pretty much everything I do is it revolves around mountain biking these days, and it's I spent a lot of years in that voluntary space, trying to make things happen. But look, ultimately, it's led me to a lifestyle that's actually sustaining a living, and I think that whole cliche of follow your dream is actually real. It's definitely real for me. I've had an interest for a long period of time, and I'm fortunate that I've been able to focus and actually make it a living. So I remember there's an old saying that find something you enjoy and then make a living out of it. Well, that's certainly true for me, and it's definitely possible. So I think without trying to be too fluffy about things, following your dream is actually a really good thing to do. And if I'm a good example of it for people, then so be it. But yep. I'm more than happy to be.
Absolutely, man. That's such huge advice. And it's obviously been inspirational for me as well, because it was you to start with and a whole bunch of other people that I've met that are out kind of, making their dream their reality. They're doing this for a job now. That's kind of led me on this awesome journey. It's only just beginning, really. So
that's great to hear.
Thank you, man, for doing that for yourself, and then also for sharing that passion with so many other people as well. I love it.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, where can people find you or mountain bike skills clinics online if they'd like to kind of follow along or contact you for some coaching?
Oh, just Google MTB skills clinics. We've got a website set up with lots of information, and down here in New Zealand we can coach pretty much anywhere these days. So like I said, most of the main centres, but I'm based in Nelson. I do a bit of travelling still with coaching, but it's all on our website. Lots of info, and a bit of history about where we came from as well.
Fantastic. Definitely recommend people kind of jump on there and have a bit of a read. I know I found lots of cool info when I was checking it out as well. So thank you, Chris. Thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for all the good stories and kind of being willing to open up and share all your experience. I really appreciate it. And I know I've learned heaps just from this conversation, and I'm sure the listeners have as well. So thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. I've been only too happy to. I enjoy sharing information, and it's just a big part of the sport and the lifestyle. So all good.
Right on. Thanks, Chris. Time for you to get out there and enjoy the sunshine.
Thanks, Jake.
Until next time. Goodbye.